What's that little? See, I'll be coming on my end. Hold on. I hear it on my end.
The little buzzies, little buzzy buzz.
Hold on. You know what it might be? It just might be.
Might be likely.
Might be likely.
Might be likely.
Baby, I got your money, don't you worry. I said, hey, baby, I got your money. Listen, man, people would be glad we can't play music. We would be rocking this joint out, bro.
All the time.
If we could play music. Listen, I apologize if y'all hear the hum. If y'all hear that in the background, you just gonna have to work with. I can't find the origin, so we're gonna keep the party going. Ladies and gentlemen, Cross Examine is back. We back to the grill again. The grill again. Back to the grill again. The grill again. Season 5, episode 21. We getting there. With that Dominique's number, Dominique Wilkins, 21.
Was it? Yeah, it was 21. Yeah,
21.
Yeah.
Dominique Wilkins. We on that, man. Hey, listen, man. Today, y'all gonna get it today. We gonna go in.
Yes.
Last week, we appreciate the feedback on the show. A lot of y'all said, man, I hadn't even thought about the stuff we were talking about with AI and all that. I've actually, since that show, have jumped the shock and really, this AI stuff is crazy, bro. we trying to change lives, you know. Yeah, we are the world. We are the world. We are the children. We trying to do all that, right? So we got that coming on. But we gonna get into a show today there's something that's been on my heart for a minute. Y'all have heard me sprinkle this through in the Kurt Kennedy corner, the CNNs.
Sprinkling, baby.
You know, go ahead, baby. You sprinkling, baby. Go ahead, baby. I'm telling y'all better be glad we can't play music because we would be crazy with it. Before we get into anything crazy, we gotta get into the real. The real, right? This is it, man. This is it. We gotta get into it. Hold on. First of all,
button. I like that. Benjamin button.
Yeah, yo, Chris, what's good, Chris? It's the homie right here. Been riding with us for a minute, man. Been a Patreon subscriber, all that, man. Appreciate Chris. Some of y'all need to jump on Patreon because we feeding y'all, man. We feeding y'all, and we not getting we ain't getting no tip. You know what I'm saying? We feeding y'all. It's dudes out here that don't even come with the content like that. They be giving y'all that same old content, same old Bible verses. We try to give you that. We feed y'all. Give it. You know what I'm saying? Where the tip at? Hit the joint. You know what I'm saying?
Give me the tip.
Jules, that's what's up. This sounds deep. Oh, Jules, we about to get it in. Jules. Stay with us. Jules is one of the newer OGs. I'm banging with Jules, man. She's always supportive, always there, always commenting, always encouraging. Banging with Jules, tough. Grant, you know what I'm saying, was pizzopping, you know what I'm saying? That's what we doing. We just saying what's up, we're saying what's up.
What up?
Yeah, broski, brotein. Remember when everything was bro? I used to call it, what's up, brotein? I used to say everything was all that protein shake. All right, listen, man, we got a crazy joint for y'all today. This is for real. We're going to get into it. I'm some of you, I'm sure, are aware of what we're going to talk about, but if I'm being honest, I think a good majority of people are probably aware, but I think there is a confidence in the kind of structures that we have and a certain downplaying of, everything that we're not really paying attention to what's going on. So that's what we here for. Kirk, Strack, that's what we here for. Y'all know I'm going to give y'all that CNN. And when me and Strack come together, we the Wonder Twins. This is that's that. So before we get into what we're going to talk about, what this World War III actually is, we got to start with, man, we got to talk NBA playoffs, my G.
Bananas.
NBA playoffs. Listen, let me just say this. I usually do not start watching the NBA playoffs until the semifinals. You'd
be missing out this year. You would be missing out.
Slim. This year, for some reason, I was like, I like these matchups. Y'all gonna watch the draft, man. We not right now.
The Heat knocking off the Bucks.
Not right now. You know what I'm saying? The OG just checked in. The OG future. Time keeps on slipping. Into the future. One of the hardest tracks ever.
Word up.
Hardest
Seal.
tracks. Steve Miller Band, right? Hardest. And then Biz Markie took that joint, right? Nobody beats the biz. Nobody beats the biz. On and on to the break of dawn. When you buy food cheap, you need a coupon. Y'all better be glad we can't play music because this was really a music show. Cross Examine was a show of ode to rap, but we can't do that. But anyway, yeah, Chris is on point. Probably the best playoff in years. Listen, fam, playoffs been crazy. Number 8 seed Miami knocks off the number. Let me tell you something. That doesn't happen in the NBA too often.
I think it's only the 5th team in history to do it.
I think it is. I mean, that does not happen in the NCAA tournament. It's just one game, right? Anybody can get got in one game. A 16 seed could just hit a game-winning shot, be the 1 seed, right? In the NBA playoffs, you got to win 4 games. So even if you sneak in a game or two, the better team usually shows up. But ladies and gentlemen, Hemi Butler, not Jimmy, him. Yes. He was balling.
Yo, he got me he got me covered in a little bit over here, man. Wishing we still had him in Philly.
I know, he was balling.
I like what Harden is doing, but Jimmy Butts, though, my man.
Yeah, man, Hemi. You better call him Hemi right now. That man was balling. Yeah. He dropped 58 the other night. When he dropped 48 last night.
Yeah, no problem either.
You know what I'm saying? Hey, did you see? Hey, I like what Giannis said in the press conference. You see that?
No, I didn't see it.
So the reporter goes to Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? I said that without any challenge at all. It wasn't no speech impediment or nothing.
You got it right.
Antetokounmpo, you know what I'm saying? I said like I'm from, like I grew up with the dude, right?
Right.
So the reporter says to him, hey, Future, do you think this was a failed season? And so he made this face. He thought he was going to be like, and he said to he doesn't speak, his English isn't.
Right, it's a little scratchy.
It's a little scratchy, but that's okay. He ain't from here. But
he's doing it though.
He's doing it, and he's doing his thing, right? He said to the reporter, I thought this was tough. He said, you asked me that same question last year. And I'm paraphrasing, but he said, you work as a reporter. Do you get the best reporter prize like every year? But when you don't get it, is it a failure? He said Michael Jordan was in the league for 18, I think he said 18 years. He said he won 6 playoffs, or 15. So were the other 9 years a failure?
Right.
He was like, man, stop asking that. Like, no, I thought it was a good pushback, man, because I think sometimes reporters, they just kind of rub you the wrong way. Like you the genie rubbing that lamp the wrong way.
They ain't really sensitive to what the player is dealing with mentally.
Nah, because, man, you hurt. When you lose a game, you hurt.
That. For sure.
You hurt. So the playoffs
especially
been dope.
when you expected to win.
Yeah, so what you been enjoying the most about the playoffs, NBA playoffs?
I've been enjoying the competition, man, obviously. Yeah. I mean, these games are going down to the end, to the wire, where they're going into overtime, a lot of them. Plus, you're kind of watching like the next gen show themselves,
right?
With the old heads at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, they showing themselves. Like, you seeing the LeBron and John Morant matchup. Like, that's been fun to watch, even though he's been up against Brooks most of the time.
Yeah.
Still, you're seeing both dynamic players take over the game at any given moment and do plays that are just crazy. Like, some of these layups and stuff that these dudes be doing nowadays, I don't remember seeing that growing up. These layup packages is crazy now,
crazy,
man.
bro.
Yeah.
And I mean, Bama's like John Morant.
Right.
He like a credit card with dreads, and he be going up on banging on dudes,
Yes.
So
even the Ball Monk with Sacramento. The Ball Monk is like doing these crazy. I'm like, what the world?
Hey, that's the series I'm really banging with.
Oh yeah, it's fun.
I don't know. I think I said this on one of my videos. I don't know if people really understand. Like Mike Brown was with the Golden State Warriors when they won a couple of their championships.
Right.
So he knows the team in and out. And I think he told the team, man, you can aggravate Draymond easy, touch him, push on him, grab him, all that stuff. And so it's been fascinating to see. I do not want to see the Warriors win again. Like, I'm good. It's been a good run for them.
Me too.
I actually wouldn't even mind if they lost in the first round, just to be like, man, go ahead.
I want to see Sacramento.
Yeah, I want to see Sac go on. I'm Golden State. I'm tired. I'm glad that the Bucks lost, because I want there to be a new NBA champion this year.
I love that Jimmy is competing and the Heat look good. You know what I'm saying? I love that they're competing.
Yeah, man. NBA playoffs been crazy.
Plus, you can't not mention my Sixers being the only ones to knock and to sweep them off the first round.
Right,
you know what I'm saying? So And they facing the Celtics or the Hawks next.
That's gonna be crazy, bro. These
Yes,
man, that's gonna be. I want to see y'all versus the Celtics. Well, that's gonna be crazy.
Either way, because we owe the Hawks for 2 years ago and we owe the Celtics for last year. So either way, we getting it popping.
And then you got Miami, New York. New York is balling right now.
New York, I'm loving what New York is doing.
What?
Loving it.
Not more than Spike Lee. That man was out there.
For sure,
thing,
sure.
Right?
Yeah.
In the West, I'm loving this. L.A. Memphis. You know what? It's humbling though. One of the things so there's a part of me that wants. I want to see Lakers win this only because Dylan Brooks has been running his mouth, and they kind of have like an arrogant disposition.
They do.
Like remember early in the season when Ja Morant was basically saying,
"Ain't nobody in the West for
them.
Ain't nobody
in the West for them. Ain't nobody." And now you might lose to the eighth seed. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Or whatever. The eighth. Is it the eighth seed or the seventh seed?
They might be. They're either eighth or seventh.
Yeah,
they came in low.
Yeah, they came in low because they came in with they fought to get in, right? So the play in. So I just think like I don't like that arrogance, man. I don't think, especially Dylan Brooks, you ain't earned that yet, bro.
Right.
Like you remember the press conference when they asked LeBron, like, so what kind of statement do you feel like you made in the game? And LeBron was like, statement? You know me? He said, nah, I don't make no statements, man. He looked around like, man, he didn't say I'm LeBron James, right? But he basically was like,
you know who I
am. Hey, look, he was tempted by that, right? Yeah. I know he ain't a Christian, so he don't use that language. I'm tempted, but he was like, I don't make no statements, man. I've been doing this too long, man. Right. I've contributed to the game. He said, this ain't nothing to me. Like, it's a playoff game. Like, I ain't making no statement.
Right.
He said, not me. And then he smiled like, man, I just thought it was funny, man. I thought that was really funny, man. It was always funny. All right, man, let's get into this, man. We about to have a crazy show. We getting ready to show y'all a lot. And so I just ask you, stick with us to the end. There's a lot to show y'all, a lot to talk about. You're going to be surprised. For some of you will be very surprised. Some of you've heard some of these things. Some of you may have even seen some of this stuff, but haven't really processed it. We're going to put all of it in your face today. When I say this, sometimes we pick titles for the episodes to be provocative and to get people wondering. But sometimes the titles fit what we think is really going on.
Fit perfectly.
So when we say that, like when we say right now that we are talking about World War III, we're has begun. This isn't clickbait. And when we walk you through why we say that, you'll see why. But this is not clickbait.
Right.
This is a very serious time for America, and I think I'm gonna say this on the front end, and then explain later on in the show what I think is happening. I think the Lord. If you saw my video about Tucker Carlson a couple days ago and all that's happening there, I think the Lord is really going to humble America because we've put mammon. We're a mammon country, not a Messiah country. And I think that's been the foundation of America is its love of money, everything, everyone, so I think the Lord is really about to humble America. And sadly, many of us are going to get clipped unless we brace ourselves, and and I don't even know how you can brace yourself for what we get ready to talk about. At least with the IMF stuff. So I'm not even sure how we're going to do that. So basically, World War III right now, I don't know if anyone's dubbed it this, but this could legitimately be called the currency war.
Sure.
World War III is the currency war, and you and I don't really see it as much. And I think because our country is such a country we're so drawn to entertainment. We're more worried about who's gay and who's dating who and who's this. And we're not even thinking about like what's happening. While the other world, they're thinking about what's happening in the world and what alliances are coming together and what does that say and mean and what does that actually indicate?
I was explaining, I was communicating to Flora earlier today, thinking about that very subject, about how inundated we are with entertainment. You know what I'm saying? Like we have entertainment and access to comfortable, like things that make us comfortable and that please us and keep our lives kind of sheltered. Like, I don't know that there's ever been a society in history that has been as sheltered as U.S. America in today's time. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard to find. You get up in the morning and you can watch whatever you want to be entertained and drink whatever you want and eat whatever you want.
Yeah.
We live really rich, fam.
Yeah, we do. Nah, we do. So this is the currency war, and I'm asking you, pay attention, stay with us for the whole show, because this is really important. Or watch it later if you can't stay with us the whole show. But we're going to talk about is really important. Please do not think like, oh, we're America, the Lord's got us. People say this stuff all the time. No, not this time. Not this time. This is what we're experiencing right now is very, very serious. And so it's going. We're basically what the currency war is essentially the de-dollarization of America. Mm-hmm. That's what's happening right now. You and I are just doing whatever. We notice gas prices rising a little bit. We notice a couple things here and there. But for the most part, we're getting our paychecks. We hear about this bank is shut down and the government's not bailing out this bank. And we hear about this happening. Did you hear about over $1 billion taken out of like Bank of America, which is one of the main banks, and people are starting to panic, and people who are into their finances, they see it coming, and so they're trying to put their money into gold again and different things that don't. There's a lot happening.
Imagine building your kingdom and your nation where you dwell, the greater kingdom loses its worth while you're building your kingdom within that kingdom.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we're at. That's what we're facing right now.
That's what we're facing. And I think the Lord is going to humble us. And you have to understand, we have to understand something. I want to say this to anybody. I just happened to peek at this comment, and I understand what she's saying, Casey. I'm assuming that's a girl. If you're not a girl, please don't be offended. I'm Casey. The name makes me think you're a woman. But it says, I don't mind being humble, but I just don't want to get burned too bad. This is people's lives after all. 100%. Now, I don't know what you believe, Casey. I'm of the Christian tradition. I'm a pastor by trade and a rapper by night. But I'm also one who believes that, to make the point of what we're talking about, in America, more people walk away from God because they're disappointed. They thought that he didn't do things that they thought, and things happen and suffering. And what's interesting about that is many of the things that people walk away from God for are not promises that he made. These are not God not keeping his promise. These are desires that people have that God doesn't seem to give them or approve of. But they're not promises in the Bible. What God does promise for all believers is that we will suffer. We will experience some form of persecution. And so you hear language like, you hear language like, he who perseveres to the end. He who conquers to the end. You hear to the churches in Revelation 2 and 3, he says, look, at whoever perseveres, I will give him this or that. God's trying to give us incentive because there's going to be challenges. You look at Hebrews 11, and it talks about believers who did not receive what was promised, but were looking forward to a better country. In America, because we've had such stability, it's hard for us to think about and look forward to another country.
Right.
We got so used to being here that I think this is the problem. And so I think the Lord he doesn't care about the economic status that we have. He cares about our commitment to him, right? And so when we're talking about this, there is going to be, to some degree, concern. But I think we have to remember that even if we suffer, like we suffer in Christ, right? There's a difference when you suffer in him, and there's a different hope.
Yeah.
But when you see what we're talking about right now, as we're going to open this up, it's going to be concerning. It's concerning. I'm a man of faith. I'm a man who trusts the Lord, but I'm concerned. I'm concerned about this.
Anytime
this
your way
war.
of life is threatened, it's concerning. Mm-hmm. And our way of lives, regardless of how unbalanced it may be on the edge of, how much riches we have here in the U.S., it still is extremely concerning. Maybe even more concerning because we'll have greater loss.
Right. All right. So let's start with what exactly do we mean by World War III and what we're dubbing the currency war. Well, let's start with BRICS, what BRICS is. Let's start with what this means. All right. BRICS is an acronym essentially for the 5 nations that kind of started this. All right. And BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But as you'll see in a little bit, more countries, there's more than 40 countries now that are, I think I'll show that in a little bit.
They're receiving applications on the regular all the time.
So what BRICS is essentially a coalition of countries that no longer want the U.S. dollar to be the global currency that everyone's depending on. So China has this yuan currency, and people are now trying to associate themselves with China. Most notably, Saudi Arabia, which we'll talk about in a little bit. That's a big
Right.
deal for the Saudis to do that. Now, what they're doing is saying, listen, and we'll explain why all this is happening. But what they're doing is essentially saying the U.S. dollar, many of you may know this or don't know this, but became the global world currency back in the 40s, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And since that gave the U.S. a lot of power because of that. And because that happened, it set us in a particular trajectory, in a particular authority. So when we do things like give people economic sanctions, these people become offended and or afraid because America can essentially just say, we don't like what you're doing. We're freezing your assets. We're freezing your money. And we do that, and there's no effect to us, but it's effect to those people. So BRICS is an acronym that people are using to describe predominantly these 5 nations, but now there are many more joining this new coalition where China is really the lead of this new coalition. And the goal is to remove the U.S. dollar from the global currency. This is happening. It's happening at such an alarming rate. And,
AKA it means strip the U.S. of its power.
Yeah, it will be that. It will be that.
Yeah.
It will 100% be that. So let's ask this question first. Why are countries leaving the dollar? Why are these countries saying we no longer want to be affiliated with the dollar? I think, well, actually, you know what would be a better question, bro? Let's just start with how the dollar became the financial standard in the world.
Yeah.
I don't know if people really know that. So let's talk about this first, because I think this background will be helpful for you to understand that. So how did the dollar, or the U.S. dollar, become global reserve currency? All right. So after World War II, this is around 1944, which is when all this stuff history is fascinating to me, and how America's perceived historically when there was so much happening in our own nation, so much injustice in our own nation during the years. Like, for me, it always blows me away when I think about the Nuremberg trials of 48, where you have this war tribunal against Hitler and against his top lieutenants, and the U.S. was one of the 5 people with a judge that was judging the evidence against Germany. And I just think at that time, America had a ton of injustice problems in its own country, but it is what it is.
We brought a whole lot of Nazis back here.
Yeah, we sure did. Should have, to be honest, well, that's another.
Guilties.
All right, so after World War II, 44 Allied countries, they met at a place in Bretton Woods, USA. And this meeting was so that they could decide, how do we avoid another financial world crisis? Now, many of you may not know this, or you may know it. War costs a lot of money. War can stimulate an economy in one sense, but it actually decimates economies because it costs a ton of money. Now, for us, when we watch footage like CNN or whatever, we'll see some tanks and stuff and some planes and stuff. But what we're watching, like the U.S. has been giving, let this hit you. The U.S. has been giving Ukraine $61,000 a minute for the last 6 months or so. So $36 billion just to go to that. Right. Now keep in mind, now you might say, well, that's a ton of money, and that's affecting our economy. That's not anything that's happening for our economy, right?
Right.
Back in the day when the wars hit, it would boost the economy because they had to make weapons. They had to make bullets. You have these manufactured, these warehouses that were manufacturing money. So in one sense,
businesses turned into that. So like Armstrong World Industries became, a bomb maker. You know what I'm saying? Instead of making flooring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you have this happening. So it can stimulate, but it also decimates. War costs a ton of money. And so smaller countries, that's why they can't go to war for real, because they don't have the money. It just costs a lot to do that. It doesn't seem like it, but it does. Well, in 1944, these countries, allied countries, got together and said, okay, we want to avoid another financially global world crisis. So they came up with a system, right? It was a system put in place and some laws put in place that essentially said, we're going to, because America was sort of the savior of those wars, that we're going to put our money and tie it, we're going to tether it to the US dollar. So all these countries said, listen, we're going to take the money that we have, connect it to the US dollar, all right?
Which at that time was connected to gold.
Which was connected to gold.
Attached to gold.
Yeah, it was crazy, right? It was like $35 an ounce.
Yeah.
Right? It was just crazy, right?
Gold
so all these
its
countries
value though. That's meaningful.
Right. So as a result of that conference in Bretton Woods, USA, the IMF and the World Bank are created. So the IMF is the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank are created. Both of these are run by America. America uses these. In fact, recently, Joe Biden boasted. Joe Buffoon-Iden, right? This dude is just saying he's hurting America in ways.
Joe Biden.
He said that he used the IMF to intentionally take money from. So you got Russian people across the world, millionaires. They're freezing their money just because of the war with Ukraine, like just really petty stuff. And so the IMF and the World Bank are huge economic. They're monsters, right? And those have been largely controlled by America. So what this
when you say the World Bank, are you talking about the BIS, the Bank of International Systems?
Yeah. Well, that's not no. The World Bank is something different. So the IMF and World Bank are both the BIS, which we're going to talk about in a minute. That's a whole other level. Okay. That's a whole different thing.
They're the top dogs. They're the top.
Yeah,
dogs.
We'll explain that in just a second.
Okay.
So once that happens, the exchange rate of every country is connected to the value of the dollar. So it's beneficial for the US dollar to be stable, to be doing good. So what that means is the US dollar is the international standard, and our money is worth more money than most other countries in the world, which is why when we travel, like when I went to India, they have RuPaul's there. I went to India, it was like 44 rupees to $1. So I mean, over there, I was like, you're rich because our money is so much stronger than their money. And that's why you had stuff like the euro. They tried to go against the dollar, but that fell apart eventually. Right. But there was a point where the dollar was not as strong as the euro. It was they had us like 40 something cents on the dollar. Right.
And the dollar is what's used for world trade.
100%. So when the dollar is affected, then the world economy gets hurt because in 1944, these countries said we're going to tie our financial state to the world to the USA dollar. So the exchange rate system comes in, our dollar's on top, and what that did is it gained confidence. The U.S. had a sense of authority and power, and this is why a lot of countries submit to what we say. This is why we're allowed to put tanks all over the world and submarines where other countries can't, because the U.S., that's how we became the world power, essentially.
And this is why a lot of other countries have our military equipment.
100%. Right. We sell them stuff. So to put it bluntly, the dollar became the global reserve currency after World War II. Now, let me give you some stats of how crazy this is. The dollar remains the global currency with half of the $2 trillion, like the US dollar, half of the $2 trillion notes that are in circulation outside the US are tied to the US dollar. That's money that people owe us. In many countries, it's day-to-day usage, right? What people buy, the day-to-day usage, it supersedes their local currency. Like the dollar, like so many countries are dependent on the US dollar and the stability that they have no choice to do what we say. 40% of the world's debt is issued in US dollars. 40% it's dollars. So if your country is not as strong as a US dollar, you know what that means? You owe us. We are your landlords. You owe the US. If your money is not, and no money has been as strong as the dollar. So when you see stuff like, oh, the Dow Jones is up and down and stocks are up and down, everyone's worried about what's happening with the US dollar. What's going on, because it'll affect the world economy when that happens. Sure. The U.S. serves as the global lender of last resort. So nearly 60%, of global currency reserves are in the US dollar, with the euro taking on the second place with like 20%, right? Close to 90% of all foreign exchange trade involves the dollar. So the dollar is everywhere, and this has given America a sense of confidence, right?
Rightfully so.
Yeah, rightfully so. So now here's what would be important. Let's break down some of this, and I'm gonna let you, Strack, jump in here. Let's break down. Let me show you guys a couple of things so you understand what's happening. All right, this chart, you might not be able to see it as well, but this chart is a chart written by this guy. I think his name is Mark Moss. And it's called he did this chart. It's called the Global Public-Private Partnership. All right. And this is how the world is governed. So this isn't just America. This is how, so I'm going to break down to you how the world is governed. So I don't know if you guys can zoom in on your screens or not, but we're going to explain this. And so Strack, why don't you go ahead and start with the BIS and break that down?
Well, you got the BIS at the top of the chart, which means they are the Don Dadas. They are the bosses of all bosses. So they it's the Bank for International
Settlements is what it's called.
Right.
That's what BIS stands for.
I mean, the name says it all. Bank of International Settlements. So they pretty much make the rules on what we do with our money. Everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just and they're coming up with some plans on how to unify all finances, all currency. Yeah. Because they want control. You know, that's ultimately what the goal is to be in control.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So the BIS essentially controls the money supply,
right,
of all the global markets. All the global markets. BIS. Organization you've probably never heard of until right now.
I never did until today.
Yeah, never heard of because what we most of us think we just give our money and we do this and everything. And it's like, no, there's a structure to how money is governed and moves throughout the world. So you have BIS at the top. And then right underneath that, you have central bank, okay? You got central banks. I'm gonna put up a different screen real quick and see, because I think this one zooms in a little bit more. Let me see. All right, let's do this. All right, so central banks, they coordinate with the BIS, right? So the BIS controls the money supply and the global markets, trade, and national economies. So it is the bank that governs the world, right? It's the bank that everyone that decides everything. We think it's the Fed, the Federal Reserve.
The Fed is one of the central banks.
It's a central bank, but it's not the BIS, all right?
Right.
So then you got the central banks, which are sort of coordinated by the BIS. And the central banks are I'm going to read what he has here, going direct and directly funding government spending. Monetary policy has effectively become physical. So you got these central banks that are big deals, right? They're big deals, but they're not the BIS, but they work just under the BIS. And there's a lot of them that you want to say something to that, Strike?
Well, I was just going to say all of the commercial banks answer to the central banks.
Right, 100%.
So they have their loans and everything run through the central bank. So the same way we operate as people with the commercial banks, the commercial banks operate with central banks.
Yeah.
So that's the chain. It's like a pyramid scheme.
It's a pyramid. That's where we put it. And so you have these different, and these are the policy makers. If you look on the screen, the policy makers, this is the part where the policy originates. So all money policies for the whole world are BIS and then these central banks, right?
The World Economic Forum. That's we've all heard that term.
We've all heard of that, right? The Rockefellers, the chat. So then underneath that are the policy distributors. So you have like the United Nations, IMF, the International Monetary Fund. You got the World Bank. You got the WHO,
World Health Organization.
World Health Organization. You got NGOs, right? So these are all. So when you think about your bank, right? There's just your bank is like really on the lower end of the totem pole, and then these other powerful banking financial institutions above that, right? And so then you have underneath that you have the policy enforcers, right? These are going to be like military courts, local governments. So these organizations, these banking institutions, they determine economic policy it gets passed down to us, and we think it's our lawmakers. We think it's our senators. We think it's our politicians. So we fight over who has the best policy, but in reality, policy is set by these banks, by the BIS and the central bank. Because policy is always going to be connected to money.
Always.
Money. It's going to be connected to money, and money is going to be connected to the influencing of morality.
Policies are determined based on how money is affected.
100%. Right? So I know this stuff is a lot of stuff you don't usually think about it, but stay with us because you're going to see why these things are important. So you got policy enforcers, national government, you got certain scientific authorities, right? They're the ones who tell us this stuff, and we think the policy's coming from them, right? And then you have what he has, policy propagandists, right? So these are media platforms, social media. These are people who are talking about the policy on sort of a popular level. And then you have the policy subjects, the public, which is us.
Yep.
That's how it works. This is how the whole system works. BIS is on top. Central banks, and there's only certain central banks that are a part of it. Then you have policy distributors, United Nations. These are people who take the policy that the policymakers, they distribute it to the next tier. Policy enforcers, national governments, certain scientific authorities, and then you got people underneath them, policy propagandists, who talk about why this is a good policy. So what you and I would call political pundits or people who deal with economics and stuff like that, when the president of this bank, those are policy propagandists. They're talking about policies and trying to convince us that what was told to them from the BIS on down is what we should submit to. Now, stay with me, stay with us, because you're going to see why this is very scary. Stay with us. So that's sort of how it works, and then it trickles down to us. All right, so let's zoom in just a little bit here. So you see this, you got, so the dollar becomes the financial world standard, but all of the decisions about the dollar and everything start and work their way down. So then you get down to essentially this. So if you could zoom in and see this on your screen, you have this. This is where we kind of feel like, okay, this is what we know. You have the central banks, right? So remember that central banks are like the fourth tier down, right? Central bank. So central banks would be like J.P. Morgan, Bank of America is a central bank, stuff like that, right?
The Fed.
The Fed, yeah, the Fed. The Federal Reserve is a central bank, right? Stuff like that.
Bank, yep.
And then you get down to commercial banks. So that's your SunTrust, your Chevy Chase, your
Fulton Bank.
Yeah, whatever you go to, whatever bank you see in your city, right? Commercial banks, Wells Fargo, all those things, right? And then there's the individuals, us. We only deal with our bank, right? They're not, when we don't get loans and when they lower rate, we're only dealing with the bank. The banks are dealing with the central banks. Right. They're getting their money. So when the bank closes, the Federal Reserve can go ahead and the government can bail them out.
Right.
Or the government can choose not to bail them out. So like when the was the SBV, when that went out in Silicon Valley, the SVB, yeah, Silicon Valley Bank, when that joint got hit, the government bailed it out, right? Because the Fed is a central bank, right? This is kind of the structure of how things work. We're on the bottom. We just get our paycheck, either direct deposit or we put it in, and then we put our money in and we expect to get our money out. You ever wonder why you can't just like go to the ATM and take out but a certain amount of money? Like you're only allowed to take out maybe $300 a day, something like that. It can change, but that's because it'll affect the economy. So the BIS, the people on top, have made these rules and they just get trickled down to us. And then we just follow and say, okay.
Because they want to control the amount of currency that's fluctuating, that's floating
100%.
around. They want to control it.
They have to control it.
Yeah.
They have to control it on one level.
Yep.
All right, so here's what's happening. Here's what's happened to kind of make the America. So why are we in a currency war? Okay, so what's really happened that has us in this place where countries are trying to leave the actual dollar? So here's some of the things that have happened, right? So we mentioned one of these. All right, Saudi Arabia has joined the SCO, and the SCO is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So they are a Chinese organization that is rivaling what the U.S. has done and build. They're part of what's building this coalition and trying to get people to stop letting the dollar, like get rid of the dollar and trust the yuan, which is a Chinese currency, or they're developing another currency.
Right.
China, I don't know how many of you know this, but recently, when there's like these America's usually the country that people look to navigate these tough wars and tensions between them. You know how I'm like Israel and Palestine, and it was always Clinton or some
Not with
Trump.
Joe Biden in office.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
In fact, when Joe Biden got in office, what Joe Biden said was that he was going to essentially kind of strong arm Saudi Arabia, which was really dumb. But you talk like that when you think the dollar's on top and this is all that we know. Okay. So Saudi Arabia was like, okay, cool. Once Biden got in office, they decided we're going to move in a different direction and we're going to make a verbal agreement with BRICS, with this China, with this SCO. And the SCO is like right now, the SCO has 8 members, eight countries. It's China, India, Pakistan, Russia, Brazil, and a couple of smaller countries. All right. So this is becoming like a new economic, what's it called? What's the international joint in New York City? The World
Trade Center?
Yeah, no, not the World Trade Center. What's the organization that does like the not NATO, but I can't remember the organization. I can't believe I'm dropping the ball right now.
Yeah, I don't know, but I know China right now is even negotiating peace treaties. I mean, they're the ones that are.
This is big.
They're the ones taking over and negotiating peace treaties between countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Yeah,
you know
that's a big deal.
That's a huge deal.
They have Saudi Arabia and Iran shaking hands and talking. They also have done the same thing with Pakistan and India. Like those are 2 neighboring countries that beef.
Right.
And now they're joining together in this SCO, right?
Where previously we were the ones that were involved.
It was always us. It was always us.
So
what we're saying is these countries are deepening economic ties with China, right? So Saudi Arabia has a company called Aramco, and it says it aims to play a key role at the heart of China's long-term energy and security high-quality development, right? This is Amin Hassan Nasser, the president and CEO of Saudi Aramco. This is a big deal because what they're saying is, hey, U.S., we're no longer looking to you. We're not trusting you anymore. We're not trusting you. Now, all this seems like it's up here. We're going to show you why it's not, while it trickles down. All of it seems like it's way up here. What does this have to do? How's it? It's all coming down and going to affect us. So stay with us.
Flows downstream.
So what Biden did, two things that have happened. Biden threatened to make Saudi Arabia, he said, these were his words, I'm going to make Saudi Arabia a pariah in the world for killing that American journalist a few years ago. And the leader of Saudi Arabia was said to have ordered his assassination for a piece that he wrote, or his murder. And so Biden said that, like, you kill this one dude, I'm going to make you a pariah. Really bad. You stupid. It's not good language, fam, because
not at all.
With the oil Saudi Arabia has and the different the things that we need from them.
Not at all.
Like, but when you think your dollar, when you got the world currency, you think you're going to flex on everybody, right? And that's what you do. So that's one thing that happened. The second reason why this is really sped up is that when the Ukraine-Russia war happened, I don't know how many of you recently, there was documents leaked that showed that the U.S.'s involvement in the Russia-Ukraine war was, the U.S. is basically lying, saying that we're just standing by and watching. And then all these documents got leaked that showed the U.S. is pulling the strings. That offended a lot of people, a lot of nations in the world. And what happened was, and I mentioned this earlier in the talk, that Biden and the U.S. have pulled economic sanctions against Russia, right? And so what China is doing is basically saying, look, our money, your money is tied to the global currency is tied to the U.S. dollar.
Right.
So if you don't like what they say and they don't like that you don't like it, they can freeze your economy.
Mm-hmm. So
they have the power. Yeah, they have the power to freeze your economy, to stop you from spending money, to make
they can do that right now to Russian aristocrats.
100%.
That's wild that they can do that.
They've been freezing money from Russian millionaires who are not even in Russia, just different parts of the world, just freezing their assets because they can do that because
their money rests on the U.S. dollar.
Because it rests on the U.S. dollar, and you have the IMF and the World Bank, or where because listen, there's a reason why many of you watching this, we don't have money, right? We don't have any money, so it's not a big deal.
Not this kind of money.
Not this kind of money, but there's a reason why, like your bank, like whatever bank you go to, your bank is only going to insure your money up to a certain amount. So like you could be a multi-millionaire, but you can if you put all your money in the bank, they're only going to insure it up to $150,000. That's why most of these big time people who got money, they don't have their money in the bank that you and I go to. They're in these bigger banks and these bigger organizations, right?
Swiss banks,
all of it. That's why they do. They put their money in offshore accounts and different things. They don't put their money up in SunTrust or Chevy Bank of America. Maybe maybe Bank of America is a bigger bank. It's a huge bank. It's one of the big dogs. JP Morgan. But they're not putting their money in Wells Fargo like that. So the money can be touched because it's put in like World Bank type stuff. It's put there so they can freeze these assets. So Biden has been doing this consistently and people are getting angry. And so China is using this to say, listen, if you join with us, we're going to build up a financial a currency that you will not have to depend on the U.S. anymore. We can overpower them, and then we'll never do that to you, essentially. Even though China has proven to be shiesty, though. Right. China is shiesty. But this is what they're saying, and countries are buying in. Like right now, bro, let me see if I have this chart. Right now, there's like over 40 or something countries that want to be in this thing. And there are 40 big companies like UK. There's huge countries that are saying we're going to do this thing. All right, so with that being said, those are some of the things that America's done wrong. All right, so now that this is happening, this is what, if you go to YouTube and type in this, the decoupling of America or decoupling of the world, you're going to see videos that pop up that show you that like, wow, these countries are essentially breaking away from their currency being tied to the U.S. So what it does is it destabilizes our country because our dollar and our role in the world and our dollar is connected to other people looking to our dollar. If someone else can make a currency that rivals our dollar, then it changes the stability of the world, which is really fascinating. Yes. It's really amazing when you look at how things are tied together, right? I remember reading years ago, back in 2003, I remember reading a book called The World is Flat, and it was about globalization. It was my first time ever hearing this term, knowing anything about globalization. And then it became the standard for the world, it was globalization. And think about this, these America basically gets a lot of its goods from China, right? How many times have you called like a 1-800 number like Amazon to talk and you get, hello, welcome to Amazon, how may I help you? Those people, those calls go to India, right? You're going to it. So a lot of what we do in our connection to other is by these nations who we make money from because they charge less for the resources. The companies make money, but now these countries are saying we're going to start backing away from America, right? So what happens when India's like, no, we don't want your business anymore. China's making us good money,
right?
And all of a sudden now it's again, it's made in America, but guess what? Americans demand minimum $15 an hour. They're not doing it for no 60 cents a day. So guess what's going to happen? All that money is going to go up. Yeah. It's going to have to charge more because our money is not controlling the world and the world's not looking to the dollar. So now our dollar will still matter to us, but it won't have the stability. So now we'll go into the grocery store and a box of cereal will be $10, $12 a box of cereal.
Right.
Right. This is what's happening, especially when you're using cash. This is what's happening. So
these are some of the things that Trump's White House was trying to avoid or fight against from a business perspective. You know what I'm saying? With putting all the tariffs and sanctions and everything and trying to bring everything back to America. It was just this like, how do we fix this by throwing a bomb and hoping it lands right? You know what I'm saying? That was the concept. I mean, because America is dependent upon, you know what I'm saying? But how can we fight a wave that's coming to crash against us that's compiled of the rest of the world? I mean, it's hard to battle that. It's hard to fight that wave, man. It's coming.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, and I'm not even trying to be like a Debbie Downer. I just don't think many of us are going to be able to do anything about it. And about it, we're going to talk about what the it is right now. So,
Yeah.
this is happening in the world. What is America's response? Okay, what's the response of America right now? So America knows this is happening. Joe Biden and them. I think. Listen, I didn't like Trump. I didn't like Biden. I think Joe Biden, and I'm being honest, I think he is the worst president. First of all, maybe in history, but at least for this time of America, where we're at right now. Like, I don't know if people saw this, but like when he went to Saudi Arabia, the prince gave him a pound. Now, that may seem like, oh, he's hip. But to them, it's like, we don't even want to shake your hand. So he gave him a quick pound, and Joe Biden pounded him back. Like, that was a gesture to say, I don't even want to shake your hand. Right. Because he insulted them by saying, I'm going to make Saudi Arabia a pariah. So what America is doing is going by this sort of arrogance and this presumed fear that these countries have. And what's happening is they're losing the fear. Because people are standing up. So like a China is standing up. They're losing the fear.
We didn't even mention that they're already rolling out this unicorn. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's what we're going right now.
Yeah.
You talking about their unicorn or what the U.S. is trying to do?
BSI.
Yeah, BSI. BIS, yeah.
BIS.
Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you, since you brought that up, go ahead and break that down a little bit, and then we're going to go into sort of how America's responding.
So unicoin is a universal monetary unit, which would be similar to like Bitcoin and them kind of things. You know, it's currency that's not, Bitcoin is not regulated. This would be regulated. This is
very regulated.
The entire purpose of unicoin is to be regulated. I mean, the BIS boss was talking in a video about how one of the problems that they're seeking to solve is someone can go and spend $100 and there's no one to regulate it or even to know that they did so.
Right.
You know, so the idea is if you remove cash, then you remove the freedom that we have. You know, you remove free trade, you remove all that. Then there's a safety that's structured because we know how much is being spent, when it's being spent. You can avoid like terrorist attacks. You can avoid all kinds of crimes, if you will, while they're committing a whole lot of other crimes. You know what I'm saying, with money laundering and all kind of craziness. So that's the idea behind it. It was presented by Digital Currency Monetary Authority. A digital currency monetary authority. It gives the illusion that each nation has its own currency, but really it's not, because it's controlled by the top.
So let's read a little bit about what they said. So here you have on the screen right now, you have this Digital Currency Monetary Authority, DCMA, launches an international central bank digital currency, CBDC. So this came out on April 10th. This is 2 weeks ago. Here's what it says. Today at the International Monetary Fund Spring Meetings 2023, the Digital Currency Monetary Authority announced their official launch of an international central bank digital currency that strengthens the monetary sovereignty of participating central banks. All right? So this is important. It strengthens the monetary sovereignty of certain banks. Certain banks. And this is a digital currency. So here's what's happening. Cash is becoming a nuisance because of, one, what Strack said, and two, it costs more money. You just think we'll just print more money. It costs more money to print money than it does to.
Right.
So cash cannot be controlled. You can't track it, and it costs a lot of money. So what they're doing, the DCMA is, and this is with the approval of the United States and other nations, they are creating a central bank digital currency. Let's keep reading. This is what it says. All right. This is what Strack was getting at. The universal monetary unit is legally a money commodity, can transact in any legal tender settlement currency, and functions like a CBDC to enforce banking regulations and to protect the financial integrity of the international banking systems. Listen to this. Banks can attach SWIFT codes and bank accounts to a UMU digital currency wallet and transactions. Swift like cross-border payments over digital currency rails, completely bypassing the correspondent banking system. So basically what it's saying is this system can decide its own rules, right? It's making up its own rules, essentially, all right? So one more thing. It's saying this. The International Monetary Fund is putting together a central bank digital currency handbook to assist central banks and governments throughout the world in their CBDC rollout. All right. Published on April 10th. Approach to central bank. I have it. I actually downloaded it. I found it and downloaded, and I started to read it, but I had other things to get to. But I want to read this. It's a handbook where they're basically saying, here's what we're going to do. Here's the reality. We're going to create new rules that govern the finances of America in ways that have never happened. Never happened. Membership within the DCMA consists of sovereign states, central banks, commercial real estate banks, and so forth, right? So let me explain what this all means. This CBDC, this is going to be a currency that is supposed to rival what China and them are doing, all right? It's going to rival it. But they're trying to get the world economy together. They're trying to keep it together. So this is kind of how it works out if you see it. You have this global centralized digital financial service networks. So you see us, here we are on the side, and in the middle is all these organizations. We will have no say in the laws that they create. And the goal is for them to be able to control the money. So when this currency takes place, and it's not an if, it's looking vastly like a when.
Right.
When this, central bank digital currency comes into play, we won't have any cash. Here's what's going to happen to you. They can know what you spend, how you spent it, all of it, right?
All of it. Everything.
They can veto something that you spend. They can take your savings if they deem you a threat. So let's just say I tweet something, I post it, and they think, hey, he's a threat trying to influence people to go against. They can basically, what they've done to other companies, force me economic sanctions on me. Just an average individual.
All of those apocalyptic movies that we've watched, that we've said, yo, that financial system is crazy jacked up and scary. Mm-hmm. Like going from ideas where, how much money you have is presented in your wrist. You know what I'm saying? Like all of those kind of things are now becoming a reality. We're seeing, this control of currency, worldwide currency, down to the smallest individual, now being connected.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like how we're all going to be connected in currency. I mean, the connection is bananas.
Yeah. And let me tell you why. Let me tell you why where some people are probably at right now. And I was thinking about this earlier. One of the gifts and the curses of sort of conspiracy theories. There was a point where, for a few years, there was a ton of like Illuminati, We were hearing that back in the 90s in rap music. Illuminati want my mind, soul, and my body. Secret society trying to keep their eye on me, right? You heard about the Masons and all this stuff. And back then, it was kind of mysterious. And it was like, oh, what about this and this? And these conspiracy theorists were it was fun because it was mysterious. And it was cool to think that there's some society that's trying to find one world government and one world currency. They were saying all that stuff back then. And then people, after a while, you just got tired of hearing it. And people thought like, oh, that's not real, because if it's real, they shut it down. I actually don't think so at all. I think they let people talk because after a while, it becomes entertaining. Yep. And so now
it becomes more palatable.
Yeah, they don't care if you know what they're doing. So all that talk about Illuminati and one world government and all this stuff and people tying it to Revelations and this and that stuff, right? There's some truth to that. There's some truth to that. Yeah. And we'll talk about this in just a minute. There's some truth to that. But I think what's happening, and many of you might see this, that's just conspiracy theory stuff, is like, listen. These we're not describing like deep secrets that are conspiracy theorist secrets. These are things the government is doing. They're giving you can download the brochure to see how they're going to do it. But this is not an if. This is a when. And because of what China is doing and trying to destabilize the dollar, they're trying to do this quicker. So this time next year, we could all of a sudden have a digital coin that is what and we'll think like, oh, what's the big deal about it? But the big deal is they will be able to control and do anything they want.
And what you just said, though, it kind of puts a greater emphasis on this whole thing, because it's not just like there's this group trying to create this coin that'll be used worldwide, but you also have China's rising of the yuan, and they're trying to take over the U.S.'s position. So China wants to be the U.S. in the world scheme of things.
Yeah,
so they want to have the power that we've had forever. They wanted the dollar to be the yuan. You know what I'm saying? So because there's this race, and one would benefit the U.S. more, obviously.
Yeah.
If the yuan takes over and becomes the replacement for the U.S. dollar, the U.S. will not have a future. I mean, there's no way. It would be destroyed.
Yeah.
But if
it's that serious, though, it's that serious.
It is
now,
that serious.
Obviously, keep in mind, we're talking in terms of the practical functionality.
And
we're not even talking about
it'll
God's
take
sovereignty and all of that. I'm
course.
talking about the Lord could be like, I ain't letting that happen. We don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
So we're just saying that in the scheme of the natural progression of what's happening, this is the mode. This is what they're trying to do, and here's the natural progression. We're not saying, oh, God's going to do this, but I'm not also going to jump out there and say God's not going to allow that.
Right. And the competition between the two makes it more prevalent, and that it will happen sooner than later. And the other thing that we have to consider with the U.S., like, as I read through the Old Testament and I see the kings come together in battle, all these kings and nations, and you have all the subjects that are kind of just there, and they're either being slaughtered because they're a part of Canaan, or they're having victory because they're a part of Israel. Well, we're not functioning in those ways anymore. So now all you have is Christians that are subjects all over the world, and all these nations rising up, and none of them belong to the Lord per se. The Lord is not putting his name upon any specific nation here at this point in time, and we find ourselves just being subjects amongst a bunch of nations that are warring. Where do we stand as believers?
Wow.
Where do we find our rest?
Yeah.
In Christ still.
Yeah. 100%, but definitely not without battling anxiety and
a lot
fear
of turmoil,
and all of that
a
stuff.
lot of turmoil.
And I think that's what this is what I honestly think. I was saying this back when all that stuff was really going hard, right? I was saying I think the way out of all this vitriol is that when it becomes Christian lives matter instead of fighting over black or blue lives matter. I think when Christians start becoming persecuted, that's when we're going to be like, hey, we're being persecuted because we believe in Jesus. Who cares about the other stuff?
Right.
Who cares about it? Like, I don't care who you voted for or what your policies are, because both your constituents and they both are angry. They both are after this reality.
And regardless, even if you hold your eschatological perspective is to rock with post-mill, right? Let's say, you believe the church is going to rise up and take over and all that. You cannot avoid the reality that Jesus said, if they hated me, they will hate you too. For a servant is not greater than his master. That will unfold. It has unfolded throughout the ages, and it will continue to unfold. We are his servants. Yeah. We're not greater than our master. We will be hated by this.
Yes, Casey. That's exactly what we're talking about. That's exactly what's happening. Is the U.S. wants to treat its consumers like it's treating the world economy. Yes, because once this digital currency is put into play, you take away cash, and now the only way you use money is basically through like the government's kind of style of Bitcoin, but it's regulated.
That's right.
So they'll know everything you bought. They'll know all the stuff that you need, so that if they ever get offended and try to control you, they'll know exactly what to do because of what you'll need.
That's right. And when people's livelihoods are threatened, that's when people act the craziest.
That's when they act the craziest.
So if you don't conform and, you say, let's say, I want my cash. I want my freedom to buy a big screen TV if I want it. I don't want to be forced to purchase a specific kind of TV, Like, those are the things that will be stripped from us, is our freedom to purchase what we please. And if we read scripture, we can easily argue that for Christians, what will be stripped from us is our ability to trade, period. So.
Well, if they see Christianity as a genuine threat, then you lose the ability to do that. They can block your stuff if they want to. Now, we're not saying that's what they're going to do. It's not about It's having the power to do it. And once you have the power to do it, it's hard not to
exercise that power.
Yeah, yeah.
In
And
wicked ways.
I think it's going to be. I think for the Lord, sometimes I don't know why we. Again, I'm going to go back to something I said earlier. I'm not sure why we think this, but there's almost like this sense that like we think the Lord is trying to protect us from these things because He loves us, and it's like,
Right.
like there's no paradigmatic biblical reality that comes from. All the people in the Bible who God loved and loved God all suffered.
Suffered much.
Suffered much. I mean, maybe Enoch didn't.
Right.
He was taken with God. Elijah didn't die. He was taken up to God. Man, but he struggled too, though, right?
Yeah.
There is, like, find a biblical character that loves God and God loves, that is not suffering. How does David be told, you're going to be the next king of Israel, and he spends the next few years running for his life?
I mean, Daniel was called. It was told to Daniel that the Lord treasures him.
Right.
Yet Daniel was a slave to Nebuchadnezzar for
100%.
how long? Thrown in a lion's den. I mean, like, my man suffered. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and I think for us as Americans, that's a scary thing.
Right.
And let me tell you why it's scary. It's scary for two reasons. One, because we're not used to it. But two, I think that we think that our faith is weak. Like, we think that we've been conditioned to think that the customs that we're used to in America are why we're strong. We have faith in the Lord. That's what we've been conditioned to think. And so when we think about, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if
our faith is tied to our financial success.
That's what happens. That's what me and Strike have called over the years theological. It's a theological gospel, not theological. It's folks. So the hope is in picking the right politician to pass the right policy, but they don't have the authority. The BIS is going to start there, and there's nobody, I think, that is a believer that thinks about Christ and Him crucified in those upper echelon organizations. They could care less about your faith. They care about how much money you have and how to control that money.
Yeah, I mean, we know how much or how hard it is for a rich man to be in relationship with the Lord.
Yeah.
We've heard this plenty of
100%.
times. The other thing I want us to consider, though, as far as Christianity and how this pertains to us, when you have children, let's say these two children begin to fight over a toy, in order to discipline them, most people would say, well, give me the toy. Now, neither one of you can have it,
100%.
and you need to learn to function together, right? That's kind of sounds like what may be happening by the Lord here. It's like, oh, y'all thought everything was cool. Give me what you have. It's gone. Now survive on me alone. That's kind of what's happening. I mean, especially when you consider U.S. Christianity, we have set up our faith on so many mountains of mammon and entertainment and all of these things that we must have in order to say that we're secure in our faith, to go to church, to be healthy, to give that banging tithe. You know what I'm saying? To have those monitors and all those banging speakers. Like, yo, fam, money is pouring out of our pores in the U.S. as a Christian church. For real, for real. Like, when you go to missionaries countries and you're going on mission, you're helping these people build churches from scratch. Cement, sometimes just wood, like keeping it pushing, and they happy with tin roofs that rain and storms and everything. We don't have those problems in the U.S.
No. That's why we say something like first world problems.
Right. We're busting at the seams.
Yeah.
It's
And
not far-fetched for me to think that the Lord would strip it all for us to depend solely upon Him.
Yeah, I think He's going to. I've been saying this for a long time. I think the Lord is going to, because I think what we've seen happen in the church. Now, keep in mind who the church. We're supposed to be the people who are the most like Jesus in the world.
Right. Right.
And I've seen people who were colleagues, good friends, that all of a sudden hate each other, blogging about each other, saying the most vile things because you may have a difference of opinion on justice or an economic system. Like, it is mind-blowing,
Right.
how much that we are when Colossians says, set your mind on things above. There is no way we do that. It's not even, I think people don't even know how to do that. And that's the sad part, is I think many of us, when we think about our relationship with God, and particularly to our nation, we tie it to the financial stability of America. That's why we're so afraid of some economic system. Right. We're so afraid of, oh, if we start talking about social justice, then this is going to happen.
Marxism.
It's like, I mean, it's just and all of a sudden now we're pushing back against an economic reality. And to do that, I am saying the most sinful things about someone else who was my brother that professes to be a Christian. And that's what's happened. Keep in mind this verse. Keep in mind this verse, 1 John 4:20. If anyone says, I love God, and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen.
That's right.
This verse changed my life like the last 7 or 8 years. Because it's so easy to be offended at people for saying certain things or whatever. And don't get me wrong, I think there's a time and a place to push back. I remember there's some times where people came at me publicly, and so I was like, all right, smoke's coming. You know, I'm not going to let you just say whatever you're going to say and do that, right? But for the most part, I had to pull back myself because I was like, man, I'm with the smoke, it's whatever. I'm not afraid of confrontation. But I don't want that to be what I want to be like the means that helps people and encourages people, not the one who's aggressive and ready to talk over people down. It's like, man, who cares, man? Some of this stuff, like, I think the Lord cares more about, do you love your brother than he does who's going to control your money? Like, because I think what's happening is we love our money, man. And we love the things that we have. We're a Romans 1 society. We love our children more than God. We use them as an excuse. Right. We love all these things. And the Lord's like, look, man, I need to do something. So I think what's going to happen is, I think there will be an animosity because this is what, I mean, why wouldn't this happen? When this CBDC, when we're all having to submit to this currency thing, then they're going to start reevaluating everything, like who's tax exempt and things like that, right?
Right.
And let me tell you why. This is what I think. Okay, I'm not the Lord, I get that, right? But this is what I think is going to happen. This is a logical way these things are going to play out. Once the U.S. dollar is destabilized, and now we're beefing with this other world economy, the yuan and the BRICS and the whatever organizations, where half the world is with the U.S. and the other half is with China and all that, right?
Assuming we don't just capitulate.
Yeah, assuming that, right? Let's just say that like there's going to be destabilization. So America is going to try to keep as much money as it can to the forefront. So where are you going to go? We're going to start telling nonprofits, I'm sorry, we can't let you be tax exempt anymore. You churches and all that, you got to pay taxes now. You're no longer tax exempt. So you lose that. And then what are you going to do? How are you going to fight against it? Because you don't have cash. You don't have this. Your cash doesn't matter anymore. If you take out all your money and you put it in a safe in your house, your cash is going to be irrelevant.
Yeah, you have nothing worth trading.
It's going to be irrelevant. You need to have, you're going to have to have a Bitcoin, some type of investment in something that is not regulated to be able to move your money. You're not going to be able to do it. So now you're going to be paying taxes whether you like it or not. And whenever the government needs more money, guess what? They're going to say, look, we need to take a little bit more money from you. Sorry, it's for your safety, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to just come in things like that. And then once you start doing that, you're not going to scale back. No. And then people are just going to be more chaotic. And then as people get offended and chaotic and they're hitting the streets because they're afraid and they're upset, then there's going to be more control over it. And they're going to use that fear. You need to be safe. We need to control these things. Otherwise, and you're not realizing that people are going to react because Americans, we don't like being told what to do, man.
Right.
We do not like being. I remember when COVID was like out, and it was like, hey, look, man, Bama's was going down to Florida and getting clipped up. Like they had to shut beaches down because people were going out there like, man, we don't care. And then all of a sudden, 200 people in the hospital with COVID. You know what I'm saying? Like it was so there's a sense where I think the Lord does not care about that as much as I think a lot of people think he does. I think there's going to be a level of suffering that Christians will experience as well. I think all people will. That's going to drive us to band together. So now we're going to need to pull our resources together and help out because we're not going to have that. It's not going to be about, oh man, this guy he's voted for Biden. That's not going to matter at some point. Right. It's going to be like, hey man, he believes in Jesus. We got to help him.
And you know, I think one of the things we have to remember too is people take positions and they take stances and they proclaim those stances and their positions is powerful, like they have authority. we got to remember, like, as it was with Saul, they wanted a king. They wanted a king like all the other nations. And Saul's mercy was wicked. Saul was not a good king. He was just like the kings of the other nations
100%.
because the people wanted a man to lead. So we just got to be mindful as we look to leaders, as we look to people to lead us through this process here in the U.S., we have to bank on Jesus. We got to bank on our king as Christians, because if we bank on these leaders, we're going to be let down every time. And we're going to find ourselves going down paths that would pull us away from the cross. You know, that's just a fact. I mean, when you're dealing with monetary issues, money and God, here's where you pull out that text. You cannot love both mammon and God.
You can't.
You cannot.
And I think that's where we're going to be the most confronted. I think many people who think they don't really love mammon are going to realize, like, wow, I think I actually do.
Yeah.
Because that's where your concern's going to be about. That's where the fear is going to be. That's where all that stuff is going to play out. So, again, this isn't trying to scare. We don't try to scare people. We're just trying to prepare, because we think this is, and there's a lot that we didn't say. I mean, me and Stracker just really, we're just trying to give you the information on a real, basic level.
It's
happening. Like, this is, we're not talking about some conspiracy theory. This ain't the 90s and the Illuminati and the Mel Gibson movie conspiracy theory. This is like, the government is this CBDC, this central bank digital currency is going to happen.
Yeah, we're talking about tomorrow. Like, we're not talking about, years
10
and
years
from now.
Yeah.
We're talking about tomorrow. Like,
tomorrow.
when you consider how rapidly things have been changing just within the last 10 to 15 years.
100%.
From policies worldwide to, just the way the world is communicating today. You know what I'm saying? And how fast information is being changed and how fast power is being exchanged. Like, it's crazy how quickly everything is happening. I told Flora earlier today, I said, it's almost as if though everything when we were kids, we expected to come about by a certain era. It's now happening all at once. I mean, when this economic thing changes and there's one world finances and all that, what we see with AI and everything compiled all together, we're going to see a whole different world within the next few years here. There's no way it remains the same. COVID was kind of like the shakeup.
A test run, yeah.
Right. It was the shakeup prior to the stance that the world will now take against God. I mean, Well,
and here's what I think. So once this happens, now, again, Strack alluded to this earlier but he was talking mainly about post-millennialists, right? People who think the world's going to end up repenting and basically Christians are going to, kind of influence the world, and so much so that the world is basically Christian and then Christ comes. I don't see that anywhere in the Bible. I think that's biblical wishful thinking, to be honest. But we all use verses to say why we think. I don't see that anywhere. I've studied that stuff significantly. I just don't know how they.
I'll tell you what, I am longing more and more for the rapture being pre-trib. So I'm just saying, like, I don't hold to that perspective necessarily, but man, it's sounding better and better every day, brother.
It is. Yeah, it does. Shoot. It does. Listen. But you know what, though, man? I think again, and I feel you, and I'm saying I feel you. So this isn't even a correction towards you, but I do want to push back a little bit against that in this sense. I think a lot of that is that we have to remember that the foundation of our faith is suffering and trauma.
That's right. Yep.
God, think about, God could have chosen any way he wanted to bring about salvation, and he decided to do it through the means in which humanity is mainly known for, violence.
The Son of God was perfected through suffering. That's what it says.
Suffering. And I think we're always trying to find a way to not suffer. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think Christians should be like praying for suffering. If you do that, man, don't ever come to my church.
Right.
Like that. We're not talking about that. But I think we need to have it as a functioning paradigm for godliness. Like, this is James 1, right? 2-4, when you experience trials of various kinds, right?
Right.
Know that God is producing steadfastness in you, right? And let steadfastness have its full effect. He's just saying, look, when you're going through something, I'm teaching you how to trust me in the midst of difficulty.
That's right.
Right? When you get
while giving the imperative to rejoice.
Right.
That's
a tough thing. It's a tough thing. And we're such an entitled people. I talked about this yesterday in the marriage, the joint I did on marriage, the CNN I did on marriage. We're just such an entitled people that we almost act like, Lord, I'll obey you if you make it a little bit easier to do so.
Right.
Like I'll obey you if I don't suffer too much. Because if I suffer too much, I'm gonna walk away as if like God's gonna be like, no, please, like you're gonna regret that, right? You'll regret that in the end. But I think that's the reality for the American Christian. We have to battle that because we have had, depending on who you are, you had it more than others, but we have had some semblance of freedom and grace. Like you don't have to worry about, this is the first time in American history that Christians have to maybe worry about being a Christian publicly. I'm saying, again, if you're different people, don't get me wrong, black people had to go through this that was different for them. But I'm just saying for us. But I'm just saying, like, in general, right? And think about this. This is the freest America has been. No slavery, supposedly no systemic racism, supposedly none of these things. Women have rights now. Think about this. This is the freest America's ever been. And look around you and look at what do you see?
I mean, I would say it's the freest we've ever looked.
Yeah.
I mean, because obviously, you know, when we talk about sex trafficking and everything that's going on, there's still slavery, there's still wickedness that's happening in the U.S., but it's definitely the freest that we've ever looked. Right. It's probably the freest any nation has ever looked.
Yeah. So then you see what it is. So I just think that like we're conditioned to think of suffering as for, well, one, I think we're conditioned to think of suffering as a bad thing, and two, is somehow God disappointed or angry at us.
Right, right.
And we have to change our paradigm. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to suffer. I'm not saying like, I'm talking this so that tomorrow I can wake up and my back is in such pain I can't walk.
Right.
I'm not talking about like, I'm cool with it. I'm not asking for that. But what I'm trying to say is that we've been conditioned to see suffering as, and it's not just us, it's human condition. You know, in Luke 7, John the Baptist, right, is in prison and they come tell him, hey, Jesus just brought a man back from the dead in a town called Nain. And John the Baptist, his response was, go ask Jesus if he's the Messiah or are we expecting someone else.
Right.
That's his response, right?
He was struggling.
Now think about who that is saying that. This is John the Baptist. This is John the Baptist that leapt in his mother Elizabeth's womb when he heard Mary's voice in the womb, and she was filled with the Spirit, broke out in song, couldn't even sing, and she was out there singing. American Idol, week 1. She just started singing because she was filled with the Spirit. This is the John the Baptist that went out and was eating locusts and stuff and honey to eat. This is the same John the Baptist who watched Jesus and told his disciples, "There's the Lamb of God to take away sins of the world." This is the same John the Baptist that said, "Jesus, I'm unworthy to even tie your sandals. I should be baptized by you." This is the same John the Baptist that heard the Father say,
right.
"This is my Son with whom I am well pleased," and watch the Spirit descend like a dove. Right. That same John the Baptist said, "I must decrease, he must increase." Yeah. That same John the Baptist is the only one who knew that Jesus was who he said he was at that moment in redemptive history. And that dude said, go ask him, is he really the Messiah or not?
That's right.
John the Baptist of all people said, go ask him, is he really the Messiah or not? Mm-hmm. And so his disciples, he was struggling. And the Bible doesn't say this, but we're human beings. This is what I think was happening. I think he was thinking, why am I in prison?
Yeah, like, because even Jesus' response was like, yo, like, tell him what you saw here.
Right.
The blind are healed. Like, all of these things are occurring to give evidence of who I am. Right. As if though he didn't already know. As if he didn't already know, right?
He didn't. This bad. If I was his disciples, I'd be like, hey, Jesus, man, we told him you kind of brought a dude back from the dead, so he's hip. Right. So he asked us this after knowing that you brought the dude back from the dead. That ain't no cheap parlor trick, right?
Not at all.
So John the Baptist I think he's thinking, why am I in prison? I'm suffering. I did what God commanded. I'm telling Herod, you're in sin by marrying your brother Philip's wife Herodias because he's still alive.
Right.
You can't do that, right? I'm doing the right thing. John the Baptist is saying, I'm honoring the Lord. I'm obeying the Lord. Why am I in prison? And so when he hears about this crazy miracle that Jesus did, he says, go see if he's the Messiah. Listen to this is the point I'm trying to make to you. You can be godly, know the Lord, and go through some difficult circumstances and question if the Messiah that you've always believed in. And why? What happens? Because I think we think that when we suffer or there's difficulty, that's God's displeasure towards us. And it's not true. Right. Because after Jesus told them, hey, well, look, go tell them this and tell them that, he also said this, and blessed is the one who's not offended because of me.
That's right.
Jesus spoke right to the issue.
That's right.
John the Baptist, a godly dude. I mean,
he went on to say he was, he's the greatest prophet.
Like, he said he was the greatest born of all women. That's right. He'll never say that about us. A godly dude like John the Baptist was suffering, and that led him to question if Jesus was really the Messiah or not. So you best believe that can happen to you and I.
It's a fact.
So as we're saying this, we're saying, listen, we have to recondition ourselves. Because Jesus, if we think about this, they interrupted Jesus' teaching to say that. Everyone's listening to this dialogue. Mm-hmm. And after Jesus, and they leave, Jesus turns to them and says, he's the greatest born of all women. So the dude that you just heard question who I am, that's all the stuff I'm teaching you, the dude that just is the greatest born of all women.
Right.
So that says two things that I think we need to know. One, God isn't offended at our struggle with him sometimes. He's not offended. There are Psalms in the Bible where people are like offended. Like David's like, Lord, where are you? You left me with nothing. Listen, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Complaining about God is a sin. Complaining to God is a psalm.
Mm-hmm. It's a lamentation.
And I think we need to realize, like, God can handle our frustrations. He's not offended at that.
Right.
But so you don't have to act like it's okay to be real with the Lord, right? Just be honest with him. He's hip already. But we have to also remember, and this is where I think Hebrews 11:6 really comes into play. It says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. Okay? And it says, and if we are going to have faith, we must believe that he exists.
That's right.
And that he rewards those who seek him.
Amen.
Why would that be the mode of faith? Like, think about that for a second. Why would that be the mode of faith, to believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him? You know why? Because when we suffer, those are the two things we question the most.
That's it. Yeah.
Is he real, and does he care about me? Remember Mary and Martha?
And those are the two things that give us joy.
And those are two things that give us most joy.
Yeah.
Remember Mary and Martha? She said to the Lord, remember, that story's crazy. She said to the Lord, Lord, do you care?
Right.
She said, do you care? Like, this is what happens to us. And the reason why we're saying this is because I think God's judgment of our nation is going to lead to a lot of suffering and submission to things that we had no control over. We're not here. We're not up here on this chart. We're not the BIS. We're not up here defining all economic we're not in high up in the central bank. I mean, there's a lot of stuff me and Strack didn't say. We could bring into you some of the names and the players and these corrupt people who we didn't even bring that in, because now we really just want to talk to you and care about you and remind you. And we're not saying this self-righteous. Listen, we struggled. There are times I've been angry at the Lord, and I've been honest with him. There are times I don't think godliness is like I'm not tempted by the Lord. I think godliness and maturity has the courage to say, Lord, I'm hurt right now, man. I feel like what are you doing?
I think people,
why is this happening?
As well as identifying with suffering and acknowledging suffering as something sent from the Lord for our good, like Romans 8 says, we also have to identify what suffering is.
Yeah.
Like we have views of suffering that aren't really suffering. You know what I'm saying? Like if we consider losing electricity, we'll see that as suffering.
Well, we'll be suffering for real.
Yeah, it will turn into suffering in this nation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because of the way we're so programmed. And that might be an extreme extent, but let's say, there was no way for the Wi-Fi to continue to function in everyone's home to be able to watch what they love to watch. we would
yeah.
consider that to be suffering.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I'm saying? Like if we couldn't go to the grocery store when we felt like it, we would be suffering in our minds.
Yeah.
We have to re-examine and consider what real suffering is.
And I think one of the ways we do that, that's a great word, Strack. I think one of the ways that we do that is remember that all of this is not the final thing.
That's right. It's temporal. It's temporal.
Remember, let me just we're gonna wrap this up, but I want to read. I'm not gonna put this on the screen. I want to read this passage. It's Revelation 21. Everyone should know it well, but I think it would be helpful. Listen to this, right? This is Revelation 21. And here's what he says. This is the end of, after it says this. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. So here is what we're accustomed to in this life. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people. And God himself will be with them as their God. Listen to this. He will wipe away every tear
Amen.
from their eyes. He will wipe away every tear. This is what it tells me. This is symbolic language, Amen. But it tells me that at some point, even there will be some sadness in heaven. Maybe those tears are because some of our loved ones didn't make it. We remember things. Remember in the fifth seal, when I think it was sixth seal, when they opened, the martyrs were there, and the martyrs said, "Hey, when will we get justice for being murdered on the earth?" And the Lord was like, "Hold tight, I got you. Hold on, not yet. There's more people that need these to happen to." So in heaven, they remembered the suffering and their murders on earth, and were appealing to God for justice. He says, "I will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away." So here God is saying, look, these things are a part of the former things. We're living in the former things.
Right.
And so there's going to be a degree of suffering. But we have to, this is why the Bible says, set your mind on things above, where Jesus is, right? Because there's going to come a point where we're done with it. I don't have faith anymore. My faith is now sight. I get to see Jesus and be with him. I think some of us want to go to heaven and don't even care if Jesus is there. And I think we need to say, hey, what am I even...
We just don't want to suffer.
I just don't want to suffer. That cannot be your life, brothers and sisters.
That's right. That's right.
Don't get me wrong. I don't want to suffer either.
Right.
I'm saying that out loud because I don't want to be like, oh, he did all that suffering and guess what? He got in a car accident. Now he's paraplegic.
His burden is easy. His yoke is light. Like, you know what I'm saying?
It's like, but you can, when you believe what he says about what's coming after this life, that's why you can suffer in this life.
That's right.
That's why. If you
what's
do not
is
believe,
temporal, what's unseen is eternal.
Yeah, if you do not believe what I just read is true, then you're not going to handle it. You're not going to make it.
That's it. Yeah,
you have to believe that there's what's coming after. You have to believe Paul. Listen, I'm gonna give you one more verse because we in that zone right now. Now it's Pastor Kurt time. Now we really talking to y'all. If you have to believe this about Paul when Paul said this. For I consider, it's Romans 8:18. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us.
Amen.
Right? This is what he said, Romans 18. I consider that our present sufferings, the sufferings of this present time, what we're going to go through when this CBDC currency hits, and all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, hold on, what are you doing? Man, I got to pay. Well, you can't do that to me. I can't go buy milk. I can't buy food for my family. Now, remember in Revelations when it talks about the mark of the beast? This is exactly why people are going to get that joint. It says you can't buy or do nothing. I used to be like, man, how is that going to happen? Oh, I see it now. I can see it happening now. They do this digital currency. It's a one world currency. They can freeze your assets. You don't want to do that? Okay, fine. You're going to starve to death.
It's easy to control, especially when you got, like Amazon has your social score on, what you're purchasing and all that. Like, it's easy.
You're easy to control when your trust is in the things that they control.
Right.
You cannot be controlled if you know. Okay, yeah, you know what? You're right. You're gonna starve. My kids, we may die of hunger. We may starve, but guess what? There's a wedding feast in Revelation 19 with Jesus. We're gonna eat right.
Right.
Like, we cannot think that the love of God is the avoidance of challenge in this life.
And as crazy as it may sound, like when we're talking this way, but we have multiple evidences of the Lord being with us, being 100%. With his people to endure suffering, to endure the worst kinds of suffering. I mean, if you just go through and read accounts of different martyrs throughout history, you see the Lord delivering his people through death. 100%. And even saving those persecutors.
Keep in mind, what's his name? John the Baptist died in prison.
Right.
He didn't get out. He died in prison. Matthew 14. He was beheaded.
Right.
He didn't get out. Like, God loved him. He didn't get out. It wasn't like he was like, hey, man, he's really struggling, man. Let me get him out of there.
Christians, this is what we beheaded for.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Too soon?
Too soon.
That's a bar right there. So all that to say, brothers and sisters, we're not bringing this up because we're not the authority here. We're not the Lord. We don't know. This thing could happen. I think what we're talking about is we just care about you guys. I know we don't know all of you, but I think we feel a sense of, we're both serving a ministerial capacity in our churches, so we feel a sense of response. Like, me and Strack approach this show, we approach it with a degree of responsibility for anyone who listens to what we say.
Right.
Because we know there are certain people who are like, man, we're really encouraged by what you guys say. You guys tell us in the comment. We feel the responsibility for that. Even though you're not my church, I might never even meet you in this life. We care about you guys. And so to care about you, we got to tell you the truth. And
facts.
Sometimes I think what's coming is going to be on one level, cataclysmic. Because it's a world war. It's a currency war. It's not going to be tanks and guns. It's going to be digital. It's going to be a world war. It's going to be currency. It's a currency war we're fighting, and this CBDC is going to be what our side thinks is the weapon to use. And it's not. I don't know how it's going to play out, but it's going to be something else.
Yeah.
And your loyalties will be tested, but you got to remember, brother and sister, that what we go through in this life is for a purpose.
That's right.
And if honestly, people don't often say this, but Ephesians 5:1 says, be imitators of God, right?
That's right.
You can't. The Bible describes Jesus as a man of sorrows. I think it's crazy to think that the people who believe in him won't experience sorrow.
It is.
I just think that's absurd. Like, trauma is the norm, not the exception.
I mean, if we have a practice of bearing one another's burdens, we're already practicing suffering.
100%. 100%, bro.
And that's what we're supposed to do as brothers and sisters in Christ, is bear one another's burdens. Yeah.
So, brothers and sisters, World War III, the currency war is upon us. It's here, and it is what it is.
But all the kings are subject to the King of Kings.
100%.
All armies, horses, chariots, none of them can stand against our God.
Listen, the king's heart is in the hand is in the hand of the Lord, and he moves it, controls it. It's Proverbs 21:20. But that doesn't mean that the Lord is going to move it in such a way that we won't have to do this. We're not going to go through. That's what we always interpret. I remember people used to always take that Romans 8:28. Look, for those who love God, and according to, I was like, hey, Slim, you got to be careful when you say that.
Right.
That doesn't mean that you're going to get what you're hoping for.
Right.
That's not what that verse means, because it says the next verse, Romans 8:29, for those he foreknew, he predestined to be conformed to the image of his son. How are you conformed to the image of his son? By suffering.
That's right.
By suffering. You're not conformed to the image of his son simply by blessing. You're conformed to the image of his son by suffering. Because in all honesty, when you're blessed by God, everyone loves God when they bless him.
Right. The good that everything is being worked in you for or through is your good unto eternity.
100%.
not your good here on this side of eternity. I mean, it is your good here on this side of eternity, but not as we would describe it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're building treasures in heaven, man.
Yeah, and you just have to remember that. And I think the Lord is going to force us to remember that. Because we're not, I think all this, and I can't wait. Let me tell you what I can't wait for. This is the one thing I can't wait for. I can't wait to see all these believers who have been fighting with other believers over political differences, all of a sudden, side to side, praying together, arms around each other.
A good shepherd directs his sheep, brother. Mm-hmm. He forces his sheep to go down the right path.
Yeah. I can't wait for that. I don't want to suffer, and what I think may happen. I don't want it to happen, but I'm looking forward to seeing people be like, "That's my brother, and that's all that matters."
All right, we'll suffer together.
Stop criticizing each other because you disagree on some things, like stupid stuff. Like,
Amen.
I can't wait for that. That's the only thing I'm looking forward to is that. But I'm not looking forward.
Khan said, "No crown without a cross."
None. Even the world understands no pain, no gain, right?
That's right.
Even the world understands that. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So believers, we should know that because what doesn't kill you, what kills you resurrects you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We good with it. So, we could keep going. I mean, we just love y'all. We could keep doing this all night and doing it. So we just trying, we're all in this together. We just trying to, we are not any better or different because we got a little YouTube channel and that means nothing. We are flesh and blood just like they was in the Bible. Them people was not superhuman. They was offended and hurt and disappointed and stuff just like we are.
Facts.
But they persevered. They still continue to believe. And so may that be us as well. May we be people who say, I don't like this, Lord. This is hurting me, but my ultimate confidence is not in you stabilizing what's happening in the world right now. My ultimate confidence is in being in the world with you when this is all done and then to have the stability that is unmatched. I want that unmatched stability. I don't want him to fix what's happening here. I want to go there where I don't need to be fixed. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I want to be there. I don't want you to fix this. I want to get to the place where I can see you and I'm fixed. It says we'll see you, we'll be like him. I want to see this dude. Amen. I'm trying to see the Lord, man. I'm not trying to.
I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, Lord, I just want to hug you right now.
Yeah, man. I just want to see the Lord too, man. I used to not think like that, man. I honestly was one of them Christians that just wanted to go to heaven so I ain't suffer no more and all of that. And that just goes to show you, man. It was I appreciated Shy Lynn for that song. Because I didn't realize that, man, I actually do think like that.
Right.
Who am I in heaven but you? The earth has nothing I desire but you. My flesh and my heart may fail, however the Lord is my portion. Listen, I love it. I'm glad he did that because it was a gut check. And I think that's Psalm 73. Go read that psalm when you get a chance. Read Psalm 73 and look at how he goes from, man, these people have the best lives. I have nothing. But then look at what he goes through. So be encouraged, brothers and sisters. Stay strong. Amen. The Lord's love for you doesn't protect you from suffering. The Lord's love for you sustains you in the midst of it.
That's right.
Right? That's where it comes in. So we can say whatever. We can say more. What we will say is like and subscribe to the channel. Yes. Benjamin, like button. I know y'all saw me the other day. Sylvester's the like button. Hit that joint. Arnold, subscriber nigger. Hit the button, man. Stop playing with us, man. We giving y'all that content, man.
Word up.
We love doing it. Yeah, we appreciate y'all. Hit the like button, subscribe, share the episode with somebody.
Yes.
Tell a friend, tell them again and again, right?
Tell her.
Sharing is caring.
Do
all of that stuff. Don't forget though, too, coming soon. We got some music coming out. We would love your support for that.
Yes.
I got some joints. I'm getting ready to drop some stuff soon. We would love you to support. I'm excited about what both of us are doing. Some great new music coming out. So don't forget about that. Yeah, we do other things, but we still got bars. We rap, right? So I'm good for that. So make sure y'all, you know what I'm saying? You came in a little too late, famo. You know what I'm saying? We off the wrap up. You know what I'm saying?
Vision was off duty for him.
He was off duty this time. Vision on duty. He was off duty tonight, boy. He just coming in. But we out of here, y'all. We appreciate y'all, man. Thanks for riding with us. I'm Kirk Kennedy. He's Strack the Wolverine.
Come on,
and we are out of here, y'all. Grace and peace.
Peace.
Don't be afraid of World War III. This one ain't guns. It's funds. We're going to make it, though.